Hello, welcome back.
Hey,
And,
hi.
and they weren't kidding. That phone is loud. Okay, it's over there now. Welcome back, guys. It is Ashram Hours. I am RT, leading up growth and operations at Nirvana Finance, here with the lovely and ever handsome Sid.
Enchanté and namaste. How are you doing
Nirvana,
today?
I'm good. Well, I'm better now. We took the walls off of my twins' cribs last night at about 8 o'clock because they were able to climb out and they were flipping into each other's cribs, and we were like, "It's time. We're gonna go toddler bed."
What a
And
milestone.
they're supposed to be napping right now, and I wish I could screen share the nanny cam. They are not napping. They're playing touch football and all other sorts of shenanigans are taking place in there. They're about two, and I can hear
Too
them.
much freedom.
Apparently,
Not
drywall
good.
insulation is actually just Japanese rice paper. It's coming through pretty loud and clear. You guys won't hear it, but I do.
I think what you should have done is rather than tear the walls down, just double them in size. Try to
Yeah.
climb that.
Well, so funny you say that. My wife is literally in the next room, just like frantically googling like crib extenders, like mosquito nets, like because we're gonna put it back. They're not ready to have the autonomy.
Oh, she's not Googling what's a safe dose of Benadryl.
Oh yeah, no, we're on that train. We've been on that train before, but
Oh, you
yeah,
know.
we're googling like bunkers that we can build for them around this thing because they're just not ready. They're clearly. I mean, look, it's day one. Maybe they build a routine, but we're probably gonna go back to cribs and just like put a lockbox on top for a few more months because they're devious. They're devious little creatures. Anyhow, so that's a
Yeah,
bit
you
of my
ran me
morning and afternoon in the last 20 minutes.
too.
Um, there's a lot coming up today. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about Samsara. We're going to do a little recap on Q2. A massive new development on the feature front, or rather the revenue flow front. I kind of leaked it in Discord yesterday because I couldn't help myself. I was super pumped. So we just started chatting about it in Discord. We'll highlight that today and go over the feature release that is coming up for Nirvana that everyone's been waiting for, most of all me. Very excited. And and then we have a special event coming up with Toli. We're going to be pitching him something we bought on time.fun. Actually, it was community led. Shout out to Sahan for the great idea. All these things coming up and more in just a moment. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm up in Washington, where I was born and bred. The rain is in my blood. Here for also kid stuff. Summer break.
Yeah.
Kids are running
Yeah.
around also.
This is
Here at my parents' house. It's always nice. The fridge is full of food. My socks get ironed. It's good to revert every now and again and just receive some TLC.
yeah. Well, actual footage of you on vacation right here, right now with us working.
You see this serene look on my face. Yeah.
Yeah, my vacation starts in 2 days. For Canada Day, I'll be away for 4 days, two of which are the weekend anyway. So wouldn't call it much of a vacation, but honestly, I don't really want a vacation. I was just saying this before the call. Like, there's things we're working on, and I'm just like, I guess we'll talk on Wednesday next week. And I'm like, I just want to talk on Monday. I want to talk on Saturday. But life is short. I've got 3 young kids, and I've been told that I should really cherish these moments. So I'm going to do my best to unplug and unwind for a few days. But
I know. I think both of
I'm
us
not
have
on
that
vacation.
gene where it's like cilantro tastes bad, and I just don't get vacations. I'm supposed to just
Yeah.
sit around and look at the wind blowing in the trees. There's so much to do.
There's a lot to do, and I'm cooking on it, and we have been, and we will be, and and there's going to be some things happening while I'm away. I think there's an art to a productive vacation where you can set some things in motion that you come back and things have improved, and everyone's not going on vacation. So we'll have some torch carriers while I'm on my Monday, Tuesday day off, and I'm excited for that. It's the end of Q4, Q2. It's the end of Q2. Oh my God. It's the end of Q2. And while there's not a lot front facing that has changed, we've got the new brand. That's a big thing. But the app, Samsara, nobody's seen it yet. We're actually going to get a sneak peek of that today. What are your thoughts on Q2? It's been there's been some highs and lows, not the least of which was a war or two that have broken out or continued. There's like 3 wars going on, if I can recall correctly. Either way, a lot of turbulence in the markets. But from a product perspective, Nirvana team perspective, what are your thoughts on Q2 as we wrap it?
This is it's an instructive lesson in why Nirvana was designed the way it was to begin with. Crypto really runs on hype cycles, and you'll see a token go up 5x, and then it goes down 80%, and then it has a winter, and then it goes up 5x again, and then down 80%, and it's very news driven, macro driven. It's all very cyclical at the end of the day. It is kind of ironic that the whole point initially with crypto was we will be marching to the beat of our own drum and not yoked to geopolitical issues. And it's turned out anything but. When interest rates go high, crypto goes low. When wars happen, crypto goes low. But this is just a fact of life. It's actually not a problem. And to try to avoid that is a bit foolish. It's a nice dream. The point of Nirvana is to start with, there are many points to it, but one of the attitudes is to start with just an acceptance that nothing goes up all the time. The thing to avoid is something going down and then never coming back up again because it's down too far.
Yeah. Going up 18x and you're still down.
Yeah. When things are driven by hype and news alone, and that's the only thing that puts wind in the sails, you have many kinds of equities, tokens, SPACs that they fall and they don't get up. An asset that can endure is what we're looking for. Slumps are natural, pumps are natural. The reason the floor rises is that it locks in those profits when there are pumps, and that it holds back when there is a correction or slowness. Another thing that always happens with crypto projects, there's a chasm that you have to cross where you have initial excitement for the first 2-3 months of a project. There's all this speculation about the future. We've seen the chart many times where you have like a trough before the big pump. Many projects go through this puberty at a 3 to 6 month phase where the early adopters have adopted early. The next wave is yet to come in. And this is the time where you put your head down and you build. That's what this quarter has mostly been marked by, is building for the next wave. And this wave is going to get kicked off with a pitch to Toli, the founder of Solana. As RT mentioned, there was a community-led initiative to crowdfund this pitch on time.fun with them. So there's going to be a lot of new eyes, a lot of new attention. And what excites me the most about this is what an odd fit we are in this pitch call. It's supposed to be for startups, startups that are pitching, maybe they need funding, maybe they're trying to get market share. And when I hear people refer to Nirvana as a startup, I understand, I guess it, by some definition it is, but we don't function the way that startups function. This isn't a startup kind of project. Bitcoin wasn't ever a startup. What we're building here is a movement, is a paradigm, is a new way of doing things. And the most important outcome to get from talking to Toli in front of thousands of people is to make them aware of just what this movement entails. It's a new way of doing finance entirely. It's a new way of doing market structures. for assets entirely. This isn't about acquiring customers. It's about just expanding the adoption and the utility of the asset itself. The way I think about us is that we work for Anna. It's not that we're out there trying to sell to customers to say, hey, here, use this project. Would you convert? It's about spreading the horizon of where this asset reaches. In the same analogical way that if you're, you don't work on Bitcoin, you don't work for Bitcoin. It's not a company, but it's something that takes root at a deeper level. The reason that Nirvana exists is because I personally, everyone on the team personally, believes that the project with crypto started on the right principles, and it just is not complete yet. There's more work to be done. The principles of crypto are kind of easy to forget these days, was removing humans out of the loop in the interest of fairness, transparency, using algorithms to make decisions, making something that is decentralized, which is to say democratized, or which is to say something that could not be stopped even if a nation tried to stop it. That's the beauty of Bitcoin, that if a nation tried to shut it down, it couldn't. Now, this has not yet been applied to value. It has not yet been applied to markets. In fact, it's very easy to manipulate markets. It's very easy to crash value. It's very easy for an exchange to commit fraud and go bankrupt. We've seen it time and time again. Yeah. So we have these exchanges that trade crypto, but the exchanges themselves are not cryptoified. They're not abiding by crypto's principles. The key insight with Nirvana was to take these principles and move them into a new domain. They've been solved and applied for the sake of settlement, for ledger, for peer-to-peer transfer, but they have not been applied until now for markets, for valuation. The interesting thing about Nirvana's market is it cannot break, even if people tried to break it. And we proved that with a campaign a few months ago.
Temple, yeah.
Yeah. The lesson is that a market, if it's in line with crypto's principles, can be just as big of a paradigm shift as Bitcoin was for the ledger. When I first heard about Bitcoin years ago and hearing that there's a way to transmit money from A to B and nobody can commit fraud, nobody can double spend, nobody can get in there, stick their fingers in the books and steal money from other people, I thought that is hooey. There's no way you can handle a peer-to-peer transfer without the possibility of fraud and theft and things like that. It took me a long time before coming around to like, okay, now I understand the algorithm. I guess it is possible. That's a really neat trick with an algorithm. Same thing's going on with Nirvana and the floor and liquidation-free lending and all of this stuff. It sounds wacky. It sounds too good to be true. But all that's going on is taking the same kind of attitude that Satoshi and the Bitcoin people did, which is, wait, we can solve this with an algorithm that can't be gamed, can't be broken. We can solve this now for the case of value, for liquidity, for how exchanges work. So tying this all back, what's going to be fun about this pitch to Tolly is that we don't have any competition. That's usually something that a startup has. You're trying to sell olive oil in a market where there's lots of olive oil, or you're trying to sell, yet borrow lend where there are many other borrow lends, and you're trying to show how you stand out. The way we stand out is with the entire status quo, with the way tokens have been treated ever since the ICO boom from 2000, whatever that was, 12, I want to say. So it's going to be illuminating to preach for 10 minutes to a wide audience.
Yeah, and that uniqueness has actually been a bit of an Achilles heel for us early on. And I know there's been a lot of people in the Discord and a lot of interested parties asking, like what's going on? Because there's some pretty basic stuff that I consider basic for a project, like be listed on CoinGecko. Can you get a Jupe shield? Like these kinds of things I expect. And I mean, I talked to you about them before I joined the team, and I was like, what's going on with these? And now I'm sitting in the driver's seat with you, and we're working through these problems. And they, on a token does present a number of unique challenges. And currently, I am not, and I don't think you are, and anyone on the team is satisfied yet with where we're at as far as presence on chain and awareness and availability on indexing sites. But today I told them, before the show, I said, look, we should just talk about some of this, just be frank about it.
Yeah.
And this is something that I want you to bring up kind of down the stretch in the Tolly pitch at the end when he's going to say things like maybe like, whoa, what kind of stuff do you guys need? One of the things that is challenging is that crypto and these sites and a lot of these tools that give you a stamp of like, you're not a rug, they're optimized for meme coins. They're optimized for random shit coins that just get launched and people are moving fast and there's some volume, there's some momentum for a few days. And very quickly, these systems need to be optimized to show which one's real. Trump coin comes out, there's 500 Trump coins. Which one's real? We're listing on CoinGecko. We'd like to put your coin on there. Can you point to us, the DEX that you're trading on? We're trading on our own MDM. It's not recognized as a DEX yet. It will be. And so when you go and point to your liquidity, which right now we're up around 40 to 60K on Radium, which is the highest it's ever been. And we're working towards increasing that over time to just play the game that we need to play to get this kind of chicken and egg thing started. But for anyone who's like, don't these guys know you got to be on CoinGecko? Yep. How many times have we applied? Like 3? 2 since I've been here, and just get rejected. And it's not to say rejected without cause. They're rejecting, citing certain things, and we're addressing those certain things, and we'll recircle back. I have no doubt that we'll get there. CMC had delisted and then relisted. Constantly working on this stuff, guys. So anyone who's like, man, they're just shitting around, it's just that this does present unique opportunities. When you break the mold, when you create something entirely new and it doesn't fit into these nice and neat automated categories, or doesn't, like, for example, we have a mint function because it's a market driven mint. New ANA tokens are created with demand, price goes up, supply increases. And that same market driven mint, that same smart contract, the deployer is holding 99% of the supply because that's where everyone's staking. On paper, that's not great, right? But you need to have a human to touch that and say, oh, it's okay, guys. Like in this case, given this condition, we can give this a stamp of approval. Automated systems are not our friends right now. And so we're working through some channels with humans to address all this stuff. But I just thought, today we would touch on a few of the challenges that presented itself in Q2. We've got some successes as well. And we're going to touch on the app itself, which is, DevNet ready in the near future. But
the reason these aggregators have such a hard time with an asset like this is because the crypto sector has been overrun by a venture capital mindset. It's not necessarily a problem, but so much of the logic of this space is dominated by how a VC would think about it. Of course, it's going to be like that. And how VCs think is in terms of valuations, equity in companies. Really quickly in crypto, the idea of a token turned into this sense of a share of a company. It's a very conventional, traditional way of thinking. It's not wrong, but it's not imaginative. And so now you have this whole paradigm around things like, what's the full valuation? What's the market capitalization? How many shares are outstanding? Whenever you examine a project and wonder if it's a buying opportunity, you're looking at a pie chart, you're looking at a vesting cliff, you're looking at schedules for emissions and treasury allocations. All of these patterns and habits stemmed from approaching crypto as if these were companies. conventional, traditional companies with a finite amount of shares. And all of the aggregators out there, the coin market caps, the coin geckos, and heck, even the exchanges, work within that paradigm. It makes perfect sense that if a company had a token and it was equity, you would have things like FDV and market cap and scheduled emissions and things like that. Anyway, ANA is not at all in that paradigm. It's more like gold. It's not a share of a company. Gold doesn't have an FDV. Gold doesn't have an emission schedule. There's not a pie chart for who owns how much gold according to some plan. And because most of the infrastructure in crypto has been built by companies that are backed by VCs, they're all on this rail of approaching problems that way. So yes, it is quite challenging that we decided not to play that game at all and just build a pure asset that grows and scales. When everyone was zigging, we zagged.
Gold on demand.
Yeah.
So you just, you reach in, you tap in, and now there's one more ANA in supply, and every ANA is costing another penny. Like, it's just a different thing.
It is
different, and it doesn't fit. So in that sense, I'm inspired by it. I'm excited about it, and I want, I'm here to build it, and I think there's a lot of value to being different and new, and that's where paradigm shifts happen. But the first movers don't have an easy time. The pioneers of this stuff, Uniswap sat in relative obscurity for about 2 years until June 2020. It really started to pick up, at least in my mind. I think the volume probably ticked up in the spring earlier than that, but it was out in 2018, right? Those smart contracts hit the blockchain in 2018. No one gave a shit. And now there's the Uniswap of insert chain here, and there's 10 on every chain. There's forks and dexes. So nobody's got any issue if you spin something up like it, right? It fits the molds that have been created around it. Mm-hmm. I imagine that's, this is the hill we're climbing now. And in a couple of years, we're like, remember when we weren't even on Dex Screener and nobody wanted to talk to us, and the mint feature made it seem like a rug, like all these kinds of things. I'm excited to be after. Now, I want to pivot a little bit here and talk about a feature release, because there's a dev cycle going on right now. We're in the heart of our own mini little dev cycle bear market, in the sense of they say build during the bear. We are building. You stopped developing directly on Nirvana to build an entirely new app called Samsara. And that's coming close to the end. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of, I don't know, just the scope and scale of what it takes to build an app? There's a strong sense of when, and it is very close. And as we wrap up Q2, which was a big part of our Q2 roadmap, was Samsara DevNet. I'm not a dev, so I can't speak to it. But watching you work, I understand more deeply now what it takes. It's not, even just designing a web page, like the landing page took. Watching you guys work was crazy. But if you have any comments on that, or we can jump into the sneak peek, or a little bit of both. What do you think?
How about we just jump into the sneak peek?
I like it. Let's go sneak peek. We've got the wireframing put up of this. There's some brand stuff that is going to be applied to it retroactively from today. I'll let you preface this. This is your baby.
It's our baby.
Our.
3 men and a baby.
So you need to present screen again. Yeah. So you go to present screen. And
the scope of Samsara is to take this paradigm with Nirvana, the paradigm of an unstoppable algorithmic market, and apply it to any digital asset that would qualify out there on any blockchain. The idea with Nirvana is as generic and profound as, say, the discovery of the AMM way back then, the constant product curve that Uniswap started and then 10,000 other people copied. It's an interesting idea. It has its trade-offs, but the point is it expanded everywhere, spread like wildfire. we have a similar kind of idea, similar kind, at least in scope and universality. And now we are expanding that to any asset can trade on this, just as any asset could trade on a central limit order book or a constant product AMM curve or what have you. The important thing with developing this is to get it both right and intuitive for mass adoption, while also keeping it in line with the greater strategy for ANA as the premier global store of value. In many ways, although this has taken up a great deal of attention and effort and will be massively successful, it's kind of, in the sense of ANA, related to ANA, a strategic side quest. What Samsara does is uses Nirvana's market algorithm so that any other asset can enjoy a rising floor price, which is backed by a massive reserve in somebody's asset, be that a meme coin, be that a tokenized US Treasury, be that Bitcoin itself. It amasses these oceanic reserves that provide the floor price. It gives lending without liquidations in that native token. It doesn't have liquidations because the tokens themselves are collateralized with their floor price built into them. So you can borrow up to the floor without any risk of ever being margin called. And perhaps most importantly, it provides real yield to everybody who holds the tokens produced by Samsara. One of the interesting things about Nirvana is this grand unification of the basic gestures of finance. I mean, finance really, the periodic table of finance is just trading, lending, deposits. Like, that's it. If you have those three things, pretty much everything is built up around it. Savings and loan. That's what it all comes down to. And Samsara and Nirvana unify trading, lending, holding all in one package so that the flow of dividends and yield gets focused into one single deposit. When you hold a Samsara token, which we call Zen tokens, one of the properties of Nirvana and Samsara is that liquidity is built into the token itself. I know that sounds like an interesting thought. I mean, usually when you're just holding an asset, the liquidity is in the market. It's not in the asset.
Mm-hmm.
But the assets on Samsara are produced from the market. We've melded these things together. They have a direct relationship to the market itself. And holding the token is the same thing as holding liquidity in the market. What this means is that if somebody were to sell or buy, they're selling or buying based on the liquidity that you hold. And if they're borrowing from the market, they're borrowing from the liquidity again that you hold. So it's like you are a lender, you're a market maker, and you're a holder all at the same time. Because you're a holder, you get direct exposure to price appreciation. Because you're a lender, you get direct exposure to the fees for people who choose to borrow.
Yep.
Because you're a market maker, you get direct exposure to the trading fees as people buy and sell this thing. Why this is especially cool is that ordinarily in finance, these opportunities to earn yield are fragmented. You hold a bunch of ETH, let's say, and you want to earn yield. You can basically do one of two things. You can either lend it, which staking is also lending. Let's be real. It's like lending. It's kind of like buying a bond. You can lend it and earn some interest, or you can try to make a market with it and earn some yield. Well, the problem with lending is that there is always this risk of default or bankruptcy or bad debt. You lend your ETH and you just don't get it back. Liquidations didn't process in an orderly fashion. Sorry, you take a haircut. But thanks for playing with your 6% annual that you were earning on it. And with market making, it's just really, really hard to market make. There's AMMs out there, and It's basically a guaranteed fact that if you're making a market, you end up earning less money from the trading fees than you would have just holding the ETH on its own. And that gets called impermanent loss or divergence loss. Anyway, you don't have any of those problems using Samsara. So I'm just painting the picture about the scope of this. The scope is about size Uniswap, that this is a new way of doing markets such that you get all the things you want out of DeFi, which is you put your money to work, you put your capital to work, and you earn continuous yield from that, while also having the secure guarantees of this MDM structure. So we're going to spread it far and wide. And the revenue, let's actually talk about how this feeds back into Nirvana, eh? Or is there anything else?
No, I want to get into that, actually. Throw me the ball, coach. We've come up over the last few months, really, with some new gamification features, right? And I think we'll keep the visual up on the screen here. And for lack of having a nice teachery whiteboard, I just want everyone to imagine there's two buckets. And Samsara generated $1 a fee today. There's $1 in fees that are driven in. Half of those fees go to the platform, which is pretty standard practice in crypto. Companies have to make money so that they can pay their employees, developments, server costs. There's a lot of cost to creating these things. And there's your platform fees. And the protocol fees is the other 50 cents. 50 cents here, 50 cents there. And in the protocol side, think of that as your stakers, your users. Like myself, I'm going to have some prana. I'm going to bring it to the ZenSoul market. I'm going to stake it. I'm going to get a piece of that 50%. The karma stakers, the ones who have ZenSoul and they're staking it, they're earning some karma tokens, essentially like prana without governance, specific to this market, they're going to get a piece. So that 50% of protocol fees is prana, karma, and the third bucket of that, the third other chunk of that is going to go directly into the floor. We don't want the floor to have to wait for a trigger price. We can have, what do you call it? The sizzle, floor sizzle, right? Or I like to call it the fizz, little bits of the protocol revenue from every single day, all day transactions, they're going into the floor. And so you have platform fees, you have protocol fees, and of the protocol fees, they're split into three. And Prana is going to governance. The Prana stakers in there are going to govern exactly how that gets split. Each week it'll shift around a bit. And the interesting thing is like ZenSoul will shift one way, ZenBonk might shift another, ZenBTC may shift yet another. One market may vote up the floor, so it's just going crazy, and Prana stakers are getting less, but the market's more active. It's going to be an interesting experiment. Now, the new gamification layer that was added to this was a leveling system. Shout out to James. He, one of our devs, he thought this up. It's like, what if there's 50% here, 50% there, and over time, as the market levels up, as each trigger price hits, the level of the market increases, like an RPG. The first 10 levels don't take long. The next 20 take a little longer. And you get up to the level 98, 99, and you only see a change every few months if you're playing a few hours a day because you're a big nerd like me. Think Skyrim, think World of Warcraft. And as that leveling up happens for the market, it matures. Now, instead of 50-50, the platform fee is lower. The protocol fee or rev share is higher. In other words, stakers, stakeholders, borrowers, lenders, market makers, everyone you just described is going to get a larger piece of that market's pie permanently. Similar to the floor, this flow only goes one way. Platform revenue will shrink over time. Protocol revenue will increase over time. And that's where it was. That's where we left it. That's where it's been for a better part of a month now, as far as the design and the plan. And that's not in the white paper yet. We haven't updated the white paper to reflect this leveling system. There's just a couple tweaks we want to finalize before it's there. But imagine it starts at 50-50 and ends at 90-10. Now, here's the big news, the big that I'm super excited about. We talked about it yesterday at our meeting. I took it into the Discord. I couldn't help myself. I had to tell everyone. The point of this is to drive value that is being generated on the Samsara side back into Nirvana. Ana being this global sort of store of wealth asset designed from top to bottom to be the best store of wealth programmatically, trustlessly. how can we kickstart that, right? I personally think it's a great treasury asset, something that if I was a crypto company, I want to maintain some upside to the market. I don't want to be diluted by USDC, and I don't want to ride 80% drawdowns. I need an asset I can hold in our treasury, and when I need it, I can tap into it and get some USDC. Oh, but I don't want to worry about liquidation, and I don't really want to pay interest. Okay, a self-repaying loan. Like, this is a fantastic asset, and we don't want to abandon it or let it fall behind. So as Samsara grows, Ana should benefit. What better way to promote that fact than to adopt our own Ana treasury strategy here at Nirvana? And so, going back to those two buckets, 50% to the platform, 50% to protocol, all of those platform fees will be collected in various assets, right? The Zen Soul market will collect Soul. The Bonk, Zen Bonk market will collect Bonk. Zen BTC market will collect BTC. Liquidated into USDC, manually at first and then automated over time, and then sent back over to Nirvana main app and used to buy Ana tokens. Those Ana tokens are then staked for the treasury that we operate from. And we operate this company, this project, from a position of leveraged Ana in most cases. I say most cases because, yeah, is there going to be a moment where, you sell a few Ana to pay something like an emergency? Sure. I don't think we're hard code committing to like 100% of this. But the idea is all of the profit, all of the revenues, from the platform side of Samsara are now committed to rolling through Ana token in a market buy. And I think that is just a fantastic design. I'm super pumped about it. I brought it to your attention yesterday, and your first thought was like, that's very on brand. Yes. Like, we're going to go out there and tell the world that this is something you should operate from as a company in your treasury. Why not be the first?
Yes. Samsara's revenue, which by modest projections can be staggering because it's an exchange, and exchanges produce lots of money, are paid forward both to the users of Samsara and then Nirvana itself. And the way that they're paid forward to Nirvana is by being split between the governance token, Prana. So that pulls the value of Prana up as it's earning this passive dividend. And the only way you can get the governance token is by holding Ana for time. So that pulls the value of Ana up indirectly, but very effectively. And the second way is just market buying Ana all the live long day, like a Michael Saylor for Ana who never sleeps. The nice thing about Nirvana is, I say the nice thing, one nice thing, is the no liquidation risk loans. And so amassing a stockpile of Ana on which you can draft off of your line of credit in dollars without worrying about ever having to repay that loan makes it a very effective treasury asset. It makes it very effective to be the entirety of your treasury, in fact. And that's what this will do. So as Samsara produces its revenue, the governance token holders receive their passive dividend continuously for any market that they choose. All of the markets in Samsara get boiled down to purchase Ana. Just market buy it, stake it, lock it away.
Boom.
For operations, we can just borrow based off of that. The reason for this, if I may, is all of this is modeled after blockchains. I know I keep banging on that thought, and it sounds a little abstract, but it's like, what if you took the principles of blockchains for crypto and applied it to a company, to a product, to a market? In this case, it's applied to a protocol as such. What makes ETH valuable? It's that you have applications built on Ethereum, that ETH becomes the base currency for a platform, for an ecosystem. You have all of these apps that are living on this thing called Ethereum, and they all have to spend this ETH token to do things. That makes ETH more valuable. Bitcoin is kind of having a moment like that too, where you can build rudimentary applications into it. Samsara is kind of like that with respect to Nirvana. Nirvana is the platform. Nirvana is the protocol. It's the idea, it's the base layer. Samsara is the first big expansion as an application on the platform. When I called it a side quest earlier, I realized that sounded kind of cheap. But the point is, it's an application built on this foundation, and it feeds back into Ana to make Ana the fulcrum on which all this value turns. So that's the reason for Samsara turning into an infinite bid, a continuous bid to buy Ana every hour of every day. And that's also the reason the revenue from Samsara gets directed to the governance token holders from Nirvana.
It's a bold play.
It's not the only one we're going to be building that have the same end result.
Yeah, well, it's a bold play. There's not too many assets out there that I would be comfortable doing this with, honestly. Look, most coins you have, most tokens you have, you got to sell them if you need capital. There's a lot of costs that go into marketing, operations, development, growth. And yeah, someday people like to have a salary to pay themselves as well. Nobody in the team's taking a salary right now. These kinds of things, if it was like, hey, we're going to take all the money we're making and we're just going to buy our token, that wouldn't work if you couldn't then borrow against that token with the things you need to pay these costs. And it would be extremely risky to do if your token could be, if those loans could be liquidated, or it would be extremely costly to do if you were paying 8% annually on those lends. So it really is, and this is, the story that we're trying to tell here. It really is an asset that's optimized for this purpose. You pay a one-time borrow fee, and forevermore, not only are you not paying interest on that loan, you are being paid for the underlying staked collateral that is essentially a self-repaying loan that cannot be liquidated. I mean, there's no other asset that I would stick in a treasury and operate this way, a company this way. So I'm super excited. This is why I got so fired up. I went straight to the Discord. I was like, guys, okay, we're going to talk about it tomorrow. I was like, no, we're going to talk about it right now because it is a first of its kind, and we are going to model exactly how you can use it in this way, and with the hopes that other people will catch on, because I would like to see less founders and teams getting smoked on drawdowns on Ethereum or DAI lens. And there's just, every time there's a major event in the market to the downside, you just hear about bad news. And there's a lot of no coming back from that. I mean, even the founder of Curve got smoked for over 100 and something. Now, I'm sure he's fine. Pretty sure he owns a few very large properties. He'll be all right. But he was not happy about that. He's like, yeah, I didn't like that everyone saw my liquidation target and we got smoked.
Well,
yeah.
It gets deeper than that even. Not many assets out there have a liquidation-free lending. You can just take your credit.
Self-repaying liquidation-free lending. That's a crazy concept.
Virtually all other assets or other tokens are in the control of the team. So even if the team were doing a buyback, it's a token that they control, and we don't control Ana. Nobody controls Ana. Even ETH, is stockpiled under the prerogative of a foundation. They just printed themselves some ETH at the Genesis block. It's just what you do. See above about the VCification of these projects. And so ordinarily, when you hear about buybacks, it's in this conventional game of equity in a company. And these tokens that get produced typically are just company equity, and they're treated as such when they're invested in by a VC. And so even though a company might be using some of its profit to buy back a token, that is a bit of a sideshow compared to the fact that they're sitting on a massive treasury of their own token that they just gave themselves at day one, or according to some pie chart schedule. But that's not the case with Ana. Ana, again, is more physical. It's more like just gold. It just appears and it goes away depending on market demand. Nobody is controlling the supply. So it's also fitting that a protocol which gets developed as an extension of this is just a market participant. It's not buying Ana to amass a treasury. It's just buying Anna to buy Anna.
To use it.
To use it as
Yeah.
an asset. As an asset.
Well, it'll also the second knock-on effect, which is not the cause or the reason or the why of this, but what occurred to me yesterday as we were chatting about it is that this would also enable us to accumulate a prana position where we'll be really late to the game. There's been people accumulating it from very 6 to 8 months by then. But the idea is like we should have that, right? As the platform revenue diminishes over time, we could talk about the leveling system you're planning for Nirvana as well, and the feature set we're going to talk about. But essentially, the platform, aka the team, the treasury, is intending to fade into the distance with regards to like eating up this revenue pie. And on the other side of that equation, platform revenue, protocol revenue via prana stakers, cash to floor, karma stakers, what have you, is going to grow over time. And I think it's a nice and natural and very healthy progression for the company to take that platform revenue and essentially start growing its foot, or putting its foot in the door, growing its position in the protocol revenue, because that's where you can see like sustainability long term. You say, it's more safe or acceptable or feasible to phase out your own revenue share as a company if you're also kind of growing into this. And I think it's safe to say we would abstain from governance with that prana, but as far as like rev share goes, that's something that then further funds our operations. And again, just modeling after what other companies can do with this, which is ultimately the goal here for me.
I feel like I keep dancing around this theme, which was kicked off with the pitch to Tolly that we're not a startup. We're just not. We're a paradigm. Look, I've worked in banks. My career started. I work at several banks actually, building applications.
He's a banker.
I'm here in crypto because there's something going on here, and I believe in it. If I was just interested in having a job, I'd just continue working in finance. But I'm very interested in furthering the mission of crypto, which is decentralize the power. Have these things that are immutable, perpetual, permanent, algorithmic, sturdy, enduring. And companies are not that. Companies rise and fall. Companies can make mistakes, lose their willpower, whatever. The goal here is for this to be finished and self-sustaining, perfected on its own. Eventually, I want to take this to a place where the company evaporates and what remains is true to the definition of protocol. Mm-hmm. What protocol denotes is something that isn't owned by anybody. It's just a set of rules. It's just an algorithm, and it just works, and it works on its own. The reason governance was set up the way it is with Nirvana and will be continued in Samsara is for exactly this. Most DAOs really need a lot of humans at the steering wheel to make sure that things are still moving in the right direction. It's not sustainable. But Nirvana's governance is meant to be something that functions even if the whole team were abducted by aliens one day. So this also feeds into how revenue works with this. Because we didn't allocate a treasury in Anna for ourselves or Prana or anything like that, there needs to be some money to develop this. It costs a tremendous amount of money to get listed on CoinGecko, for instance. It's quite a shakedown. It almost feels like a bribe. They give you tens of thousands of dollars from time to time to make integrations happen, and $100,000 to do security audits. So there has to be money from somewhere. And it's true that a lot of the team just works on this passionately right now. But a little money helps for the bootstrapping. But that's not the end goal. The end goal is to get to a point where it's done. There's no more need for full-time development on this. It's integrated everywhere it needs to be integrated. And community participants can take the reins. Bitcoin was able to achieve that escape velocity where people just support Bitcoin out of their own self-interest.
Not only support, I mean, spin up major companies around it too.
Yeah.
There's a
That'll
lot
happen
of
with
big
this.
companies. Yeah.
That's what we want to happen. We don't want to be a bottleneck. And at a certain point, it'll take on a life of its own, and it doesn't make sense for a team to be receiving revenue from this anymore. It'll be done. So the same thing that you mentioned with a leveling system with Samsara, where as the market matures, there's a well-defined math function where the portion of revenue that goes into R&D and operations vanishes. It vanishes smoothly according to a schedule. Same thing with Nirvana, that as it matures, the revenue needed to develop will necessarily be shrinking anyway. And so there's no reason to be routing more money to the team. And all of this comes back to the fact that, if I wanted to start a traditional company, I'd start a traditional company. But what we want to do is work with crypto to make crypto something that's actually different and better than the conventional way of doing business.
Improve on things, solve for major problems that exist. And, in some ways, unfortunately, the crypto rails have been used to actually just extract, but on turbo. like a lot of the games that were played in TradFi are just being played here, and they're just being played at a much greater speed. It's like it's created a monster. And that's not to say, again, I want to reiterate, I said this on Friday's pod, but like, it's not all bad. There's a lot of brilliant stuff being built by incredibly smart people in crypto. And so, we are yet another of that I'm excited to bring to market. Look, one other thing I want to touch on is the Nirvana feature release, right? So there's so much talk about Samsara. There has been a lot of excitement and anticipation. And to dial into that and to stay focused on that, the feature requests that have been built up for Nirvana over time have been in the queue. And we talked this morning. I said, let's list those. And that's why my screen is so bright, because we listed them on a Google Doc that's very bright. But I wanted to, I want to just touch on those. Like, let's get specific. What exactly? And I'm happy to walk through this. I've got it right here. But like, I want to talk to the people that are listening about the specific things. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of requests. There's been a ton of like, this is coming soon. That very specifically, what is coming for Nirvana as soon as the Samsara is ready, it goes to DevNet. We send it off for audit. There's a little bit of waiting going on there. In that time, you said maybe 2 to 3 weeks it'll take to put these out there. Mm-hmm. Super excited. Namely the floor sizzle. You wrote floor sizzle. I call it the fizz.
Fizz. Yeah, fizz is better. A percolation.
Percolation.
Yeah.
So the floor, as it is right now, increases when a trigger price is hit. That is your classic standard Nirvana. But it turns out that the floor can be denominated to 6 decimal points. 3.682001, 3.682002. And if it was denominated to 6 decimal points, and if a portion of all the revenues did go directly into the floor, not reducing the trigger price, none of that, just literally ticking up that 6 decimal point over time, that would bring the floor to life. That is the floor sizzle. That is what's coming on the next major release. And that will be governable. Can we talk about the exact percentage increase? I really want to.
Go for it.
Okay. So right now, 75% is platform fee. That's because Nirvana was bootstrapped. There was no, there's no war chest. Everyone wants these things. Well, we've got to pay for them. So there's a 75% platform fee, 15% goes to Prana, and 10% goes to Meta. We're going to double the Prana to 30. And we're going to chop it in half again. So, yeah, yoink, it's going right back, but it's going into the floor. So when this new floor sizzle comes out, it will be a governable tug of war between Prana and cash to floor. And it will be tug of warring. I love speaking with my hands when I don't have a whiteboard. It'll be tug of warring between this 30%. So 30% of revenue on the Nirvana side will go either to the floor or to Prana stakers. And this will just be another weekly thing for Prana people to debate. And that's it. That's the floor sizzle. That's the big thing. So it's not enough that we add that floor sizzle. We've also got to increase the amount of revenue going towards it so that it's significant. And I know you haven't, I don't think you've got this fully hashed out, but essentially imagine this leveling system that we have for Samsara being applied to Nirvana as well. So after this update, it will be 60%, 30% to protocol, and 10% to meta. And just imagine as this market levels up, as ANA trigger prices are hit over time, that platform revenue, that team revenue will continue to diminish as this Prana or floor bucket continues to increase. I think you'll have more details on that in the future, but the idea is there will be a distinct, predictable sort of recipe or algorithm that will determine exactly how that shift takes place based on growth, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
So that's coming.
The theme of Nirvana is always, these are just the rules. We don't make them. I have an allergic reaction to arbitrariness in all its shapes.
Yeah, we've talked.
Happening schedule with Bitcoin. There'll be a happening schedule for Nirvana's revenue, which is not directed towards protocol participants themselves. But it won't be a schedule based on time, but rather maturity. And the way you measure maturity is the height of the floor, how big that gets. So the more the price pumps, the higher the floor gets. That's the more mature ANA gets. There's a direct correlation between that and market capitalization. That's the metric by which you keep shrinking the amount of revenue which does not go directly into the hands of the protocol users all the way to zero.
And it makes sense with our entire treasury and operations plan because our goal is to accumulate ANA. And as the floor price of that ANA rises, we can borrow more dollars, which means we need less platform revenue to fund operations. So it's all coming together in a very logical way. We've talked about this probably more than any other thing since I've joined the team, is just trying to get this right. Because, I came in wearing my ANA holder hat, and of course now have transitioned into an ANA team member. And but I'm still near and dear to this idea of getting that platform revenue over to the protocol side. And so I think it's safe to say we'll move on from this today, but the exact leveling system either is introduced with this feature release or the one right after. A new thing that's coming in as well that you've talked about is price curve sensitivity. So another governable piece that will be there, another Prana playground. Just exactly what it sounds like. And you've talked about this before, but just essentially each new epoch will have a slightly different curve if the people so choose.
Yes.
You want to touch on that?
Well, once again, getting rid of arbitrariness. So the fact of any algorithmic pricing function, whether it's a Uniswap, AMM, a Meteora pool, whatever, anything that's using math to set the price impact based on purchase size, just has a parameter for how much price impact there is. If you want to buy $100 of this, it's going to move the price X%. Nirvana uses that the same way. It uses a pricing function instead of market makers on an order book because it's algorithmic. It is a market without market makers, as market makers make it impossible to have fair and transparent pricing for things. The exact parameter of the sensitivity of price changes is just a number. It could be any number. The number that it is right now should be governable. That way, the program, the protocol, can adapt over the years and decades to whatever the shifting market climate happens to be. It could be the case that it's just set it and forget it forever. The Bitcoin halvening schedule is an example of that. It's just etched in stone. It's never going to change. That's the supply, the end. I don't believe that a global store of value should be that inflexible. And so the sensitivity of the pricing function, which correlates to how volatile, how liquid the ANA token is, will also be subject to governance. And this is not news. We've talked about this for a couple of months, but it's coming in with a batch of these other features that you talked about. I want to thank the users for patience. One thing I've learned from working at banks is it's important to measure twice and cut once with development. And that ethos has been there as we've been modeling, thinking through, testing, auditing these changes. So we're taking time to roll them out, and they will be moved to the top of the queue after Samsara goes live. There'll be this batch of improvements to Nirvana. You can try to measure twice and cut once, but sometimes you still have to cut twice, which is
Yeah. Yeah. And the next couple I actually spoke about already, but governing the liquidity buffer. I know that was a big one when everyone was talking about the floor. So the liquidity buffer required for a trigger price will be governable to a few degrees.
Yep.
And then, yes, a change in how prana exercise fees are calculated. So thinking about the fee, the fee coming in on the profit, not the cost basis. So some minor other things that have come up. And then, the big increase in the prana revenue by 200%. Or 100%. So pretty excited about all that. And I wanted to make sure we touched on it today because it's been all Samsara taking the airwaves for the last month or two. And as we go into Q3, it's really in my mind, like, I want to get this next big feature release out for Nirvana. Get, as far as like what's on my radar in the next few months, heavy focus on token presence on chain and on indexes. I just, it's irking me. I've been working on it for a couple months. There's a lot of blockers. There's a lot of support incoming, and I'm excited to just tackle that thing. It should be such a minor thing, but again, some of the unique properties of our token that I discussed earlier in the show are presenting unique challenges. So I will be full turbo on that with David and some others. And we've got, Samsara going to DevNet. Question for you. Totally Pitch coming up. Very exciting time to get some airtime with him. What is your goal coming out of that? Like, if you had to be put on the spot like you are right now and asked, what is the big thing if you walked away from that day and this was the result, you'd be happy?
I got drawn to Solana after spending time working on EVM because of Toli's vision for it. And it comes down to this idea that the example doesn't need to be finance, but finance is an easy example. When you're trying to trade, transact, work with financial instruments, you have these companies, these entities that are trying to shave yards off of their fiber optic cable to get closer to the mainframe so they can get an edge with a few microseconds here and there.
Hummingbird Project movie about that. Very cool.
Yeah. And Toli's thought, which is very compelling, which is if you could make it so that there's equal access to data, equal access to interactions, calling procedures around the globe, why not try? If you have an idea for how you could do it, why not try? Wouldn't that be really cool if somebody in Uruguay and Kazakhstan and Delaware could all be on equal footing participating in finance? And again, finance is just a narrow use case. Blockchains can be used for more than that. And everything about Solana is designed with that one goal in mind, which is let's equalize and democratize the access to participating in some shared state machine. So he's a guy who thinks from first principles and then the rest follows from that, which is the same thing with our project, which is the reason that we're here, the reason that we're working on this, our mission is just to create the best store of value human civilization has ever seen. And I know that this sounds grandiose, but there's really not that much competition and there's plenty of room at the top. mean, can we point to anything else which is the greatest store of value of all time? Gold, I guess. Anything else come
It's
to
the most
mind?
classic, Bitcoin
Yeah,
hot on its heels right now, objectively percentage year over year for a smaller sample size, it
yeah,
is
yeah.
acting very well as a store of value.
The point is, there's just not many people
That's
thinking
two.
about that problem. It's not a
Yeah.
crowded space.
Yeah. No, there's
And
like a handful. I mean, we talked about two, maybe silver, weird.
silver,
I
yeah.
don't know. I'm not a
For
metals guy,
a
but
world as
it's
diverse as ours,
yeah, yeah.
why are there so few people tackling this problem? A
Mhm.
reserve asset that anyone can have access to. That is how we've set up Nirvana to be. Every single feature about it, the governance that we just mentioned, governance which is immune to takeovers, immune to the kinds of attacks or centralized authority that usually happens in boardrooms. Check, problem solved. You need that for longevity with a store of
Mhm.
value. In fact, we're seeing with many large projects and blockchains themselves, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Sol, governance is a big problem for them, and it can cause the value of these assets to be quite wobbly. But that's the most esoteric feature. The fact that Nirvana has built-in liquidity, which is most poignantly expressed with a floor, which is essentially an infinite bid at a price point where literally every token can be sold back at a guaranteed price. The fact that there is credit built into it. You can borrow natively, it's in the DNA of the protocol. These are all things that a store of value should have. It's very hard to get a loan backed by gold. It's very hard to get a loan backed by Bitcoin. But that's a very important property that a store of value should have. It should give you credit. It's very hard to find liquidity for gold. And the liquidity for Bitcoin, it could come, it could go. It kind of depends on how BlackRock is feeling that day. The liquidity is built into ANA. And it's very hard to find productive yield for gold, for silver, for Bitcoin. But ANA has yield built into it. We talked about this about 30 minutes ago, how you're
Mhm.
also earning trading fees and lending fees and things like that for holding it. Anyway, so what I would want to get out of this pitch is to say this is the same kind of first principled thinking, where if you sat down on the top of a mountain with a notepad and tried to design the perfect store of value, what would it look like? We think that we're on to something with this. And our goal is just to see this become adopted. Our goal is to see trillions of dollars of this asset be held by nation states as a first-class treasury reserve that they can stake their fortunes on, hold on to it, and profit. That's what a store of value should do. A place to park your money.
And no matter how grand that idea may sound, to achieve it, you got to start at the beginning, and that's where we are. You got to start with one treasury, making the choice to adopt ANA as its base operational asset. We're going to step in the ring and do that. And that's in my mind, that's probably the biggest development in our design and plan since I've joined the team. I mean, it's massive. 2 days ago, when it came to asking the question, how well are we going to tie back the growth of the Nirvana ecosystem, Samsara, launch pads in the future? How well are we going to be able to tie that back to ANA? And doing it through Prana and some rev share meant, in this case, 1/3 of half of the revenue was going to go to Prana stakers of that market. And that should have a positive impact on ANA price. And it's likely, and I spoke to FG actually about this, that's likely one of those things that it's like it will, but then like people won't even notice. And, ANA won't reprice. It's an inefficient market. And now we've gone from half of 1/3 or 1/3 of half of this going to, Prana, to the other entire half of the pie going directly into ANA. I mean, it's a very big A/B swap in change in direction and plan and promise from the team. So I couldn't be happier to share that with you guys today. And it literally just smacks of good decision making, but it is a bold decision. I mean, you're stepping in and saying, hey, this is what we are, and we're going to prove it by going all in on this idea of Anna as a treasury asset, as a store value, store wealth. So I'm proud. I'm excited, and as we wrap up Q2, I mean that's really the crown jewel for the quarter for me, is just how this design has come to life into the DevNet. I mean, you've been coding it, and there's been a lot of really talented, smart people around you, and us discussing exactly how best to design, all the little moving bits, the numbers, the math, and I think we nailed it. I'm excited. I think it's in its final form now.
The revenue will sure be something, and all feeding back into the mothership. But frankly, what kicked off this strategically was just the goal to get people thinking about floors and thinking about this paradigm. One of the biggest benefits Samsara is going to have is just percolating through the mind share, is to make this paradigm ubiquitous and commonplace, which happens all the time in crypto. You have one good idea, like a constant product AMM, 9 months later, you see it everywhere. You have one good idea, like the perpetuals derivative, and then you see it everywhere. This idea of assets can have floor prices. You can have protocol on liquidity. You can have lending without liquidations and market making without impermanent loss. Samsara is a great distribution vehicle to get everyone on every blockchain aware of this.
Yeah. And I think if you wanted to nutshell, put that comment in a nutshell, as a call to action for Toli, it's just, it's awareness first. It's reinvigorating. I think DeFi on Solana to me is a big call to action. Like, hey, like we've got some new things here going on that are a far cry from the dot funds that are springing up left and right. And to me, it's that awareness piece. I'm curious to know, what kind of audience this thing will draw in. It's scheduled to go up on the 8th. There's actually a tweet. We're probably going to retweet it out very shortly here. It popped up just as we were in the green room. And any final thoughts you want to share as we wrap up today? Wrap up Q2. What's the final word? Said it all. No pressure. Just
I have said it all.
I want to make sure I don't cut you off. If you have anything else to say it now, because we're wrapping up here.
We are wrapped.
Sweet.
As always, if you're not in our Discord, you can be. Great community.
Call to action. Click on this link. Yeah.
Q&A. If you have any questions, that's the first place to go. Same thing with on Twitter. We monitor that.
All right.
Thank you, RT.
Back to daylight. Okay, guys. Till next time. Have a wonderful week. And if you celebrate Canada Day, we'll see you there. And then July 4th for the rest of you. Yeah. And if you're from Europe, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. It's a lovely place. I've been there.
90 vacation days anyway.
Yeah, you guys are good. All right. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care. Happy Q3 coming up.